Confessions 6. O Lord, my helper and my redeemer, I shall now tell and confess to the glory of your name how you released me from the fetters of lust, which held me so tightly shackled, and from my slavery to the things of this world. I continued to lead my usual life, but I was growing more and more unsettled, and day after day I poured out my heart to you. I went to your church whenever I had time from my work, which was a painful load upon my shoulders. Alypius was with me, now taking respite from his legal work after a third term of office as assessor. He was looking for clients who would pay him for his advice, just as my pupils paid me for skill in words, if it is possible to teach such an art. As a gesture of friendship to Alypius and me, Nebridius had consented to act as assistant to a great friend of ours named Verecundus, a Milanese, who was a teacher of grammar and had made most insistent demands upon our friendship for one of us to give him loyal help, for this he badly needed. It was not the desire of profit that had led Nebridius to accept the post, for if he had wished he could have earned more by teaching literature. But he was too good and kind a friend to refuse a request which appealed to his good nature. He did what was asked of him in an unobtrusive way, taking care not to attract the attention of important people as the world reckons importance, in case contact with them should disturb his peace of mind. For he wanted to keep his mind free and enjoy as many hours of leisure as he could, for the purpose of thinking and reading and listening to discussions on philosophy. One day, when for some reason that I cannot recall, Nebridius was not with us, Alypius and I were visited at our house by a fellow countryman of ours from Africa, a man named Pontius, who held a high position in the emperor's household. He had some request to make of us, and we sat down to talk. He happened to notice a book lying on a table used for games, which was near where we were sitting. He picked it up and opened it, and was greatly surprised to find that it contained Paul's epistles, for he had supposed that it was one of the books which used to tax all my strength as a teacher. Then he smiled and looked at me and said how glad he was and how surprised to find this book, and no others there before my eyes. He, of course, was a Christian and a faithful servant to you, our God. Time and again he knelt before you in church, repeating his prayers and lingering over them. When I told him that I studied Paul's writings with the greatest attention, he began to tell us the story of Antony, the Egyptian monk, whose name was held in high honor by your servants, although Alypius and I had never heard it until then. When Pontius realized this, he went into greater detail, wishing to instill some knowledge of this great man into our ignorant minds, for he was very surprised that we had not heard of him. For our part, we too were astonished to hear of the wonders you had worked so recently, almost in our own times, and witnessed by so many in the true faith and in the Catholic Church. In fact, all three of us were amazed. Alypius and I, because the story we heard was so remarkable, and Pontius because we had not heard it before. After this, he went on to tell us of the groups of monks in the monasteries, of their way of life that savors of your sweetness, and of the fruitful wastes of the desert. All of this was new to us. There was a monastery at Milan also, outside the walls, full of good brethren under the care of Ambrose, but we knew nothing of this either. Pontius continued to talk, and we listened in silence. Eventually he told us of the time when he and 3 of his companions were at Treves. One afternoon, while the emperor was watching the games in the circus, they went out to stroll in the gardens near the city walls. They became separated into 2 groups, Pontius and one of the others remaining together, while the other 2 went off by themselves. As they wandered on, the second pair came to a house, which was the home of some servants of yours, men poor in spirit, to whom the kingdom of heaven belongs. In the house they found a book containing the life of Antony. One of them began to read it and was so fascinated and thrilled by the story that even before he had finished reading, he conceived the idea of taking upon himself the same kind of life and abandoning his career in the world. Both he and his friend were officials in the service of the state, in order to become your servant. All at once he was filled with the love of holiness. Angry with himself and full of remorse, he looked at his friend and said, "What do we hope to gain by all the efforts we make? What are we looking for? What is our purpose in serving the state? Can we hope for anything better at court than to be the emperor's friends? Even so, surely our position will be precarious and exposed to much danger. We shall meet it at every turn, only to reach another danger which is greater still. And how long is it to be before we reach it? But if I wish, I can become the friend of God at this very moment." After saying this, he turned back to the book, laboring under the pain of the new life that was taking birth in him. He read on, and in his heart, where you alone could see, a change was taking place. His mind was being divested of the world, as could presently be seen. For while he was reading, his heart leaping and turning in his breast, a cry broke from him as he saw the better course and determined to take it. "Your servant now," he said to his friend, "I have torn myself free from all our ambitions and have decided to serve God. From this very moment, here and now, I shall start to serve him. If you will not follow my lead, do not stand in my way." The other answered that he would stand by his comrade, for such service was glorious and the reward was great. So these two, now your servants, built their tower at the cost which had to be paid, that is, at the cost of giving up all they possessed and following you. At this moment, Pontius and the man who had been walking with him in another part of the garden arrived at the house, looking for their friends. Now that they had found them, they said that it was time to go home, as the daylight was beginning to fade. But the other two told them of the decision they had made and what they proposed to do. They explained what had made them decide to take this course and how they had agreed upon it, and they asked their friends if they would not join them, at least not to put obstacles in their way. Pontius said that he and the other man did not change their old ways, but they were moved to tears for their own state of life. In all reverence, they congratulated the others and commended themselves to their prayers. Then they went back to the palace, burdened with hearts that were bound to this earth. But the others remained in the house, and their hearts were fixed upon heaven. Both these men were under a promise of marriage, but once the two women heard what had happened, they too dedicated their virginity to you.